You wake up, another morning, another day that looks exactly like yesterday, and the day before that, and the one before that, and somewhere between sleep and waking, in that thin space where dreams dissolve into reality, you feel it. Is this all there is? Not despair, exactly. Not depression. Something subtler. A whisper beneath the noise of your daily life. A restlessness. The sense that you're supposed to be somewhere else, doing something else, being someone else. And here's what no one tells you. That feeling? It's not a problem. It's an invitation. Joseph Campbell spent decades studying the myths and legends of humanity. From ancient Mesopotamia to modern cinema, from religious texts to fairy tales, he traced the same pattern appearing again and again. He called it the hero's journey. And here's the radical part. It's not just the structure of stories. It's the structure of transformation itself. Every meaningful change you've ever experienced, learning to walk, leaving home, ending a relationship, starting a career, facing a crisis, follows the same archetypal pattern. You're not watching the hero's journey from the outside. You're living it, right now, in this moment, with all its beauty and terror and uncertainty. The question isn't whether you're on the journey. The question is, do you recognize it? Let's start where every journey begins, with the world you know, your apartment, your job, your relationships, your routines. There's nothing wrong with this world. It's safe, predictable. You know the rules here. But safety has a cost, and that cost is aliveness. Psychologist Abraham Maslow studied human potential for decades. He estimated that less than 1% of people ever reach what he called self-actualization, the full expression of who they could become. Why so few? Because actualizing your potential requires leaving the known world. It requires stepping into uncertainty, challenge, the unknown. And your brain is hardwired to resist that with everything it has. Neuroscientist Jake Panksepp identified 7 core emotional systems in mammals. One is the seeking system, the drive to explore, to venture beyond familiar territory. But another is a fear system, the ancient alarm screaming. Stay put. Safety is here. Danger's out there. Every transformation begins with this tension, the pull toward growth and the terror of change. You feel it, don't you? That tightness in your chest when you think about making a move. That voice saying, who do you think you are? Stay small. Stay safe. That's not weakness. That's evolution. For 300,000 years, the unknown meant predators, starvation, death. Your amygdala learned. Familiar equals safe. Unfamiliar equals danger. But here's the irony. In the modern world, the greatest danger isn't out there in the unknown. It's in never leaving. It's the slow death of never trying. The gradual dimming of your light. The quiet tragedy of reaching the end and realizing you never really lived. Carl Jung wrote, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Because accepting yourself means accepting your potential. And potential demands expression. That's the real terror of staying put. Not that your life is bad, but that staying means never discovering who you could have been. And then one day, something shifts. Maybe it's subtle. A book that won't leave your mind. A conversation that plants a seed. A dream that keeps recurring. Maybe it's dramatic. A loss. A crisis. A moment so painful it cracks you open. Or maybe it's just a morning when you wake up and the question isn't a whisper anymore. It's a roar. What am I doing with my life? That's the call to adventure. In myths, it arrives as a wizard with a quest, a message from a distant land, a challenge that cannot be ignored. In your life, it might be a job offer that terrifies you, a relationship that needs to end, a creative project that won't let you go, a vision of who you could be that haunts your waking hours. The call is always specific, always concrete, always accompanied by fear. Researcher Breen Brown spent 20 years studying courage, and her finding is simple. There's no courage without fear. Courage is fear walking. The call to adventure never feels comfortable. It destabilizes everything. It asks you to trade certainty for possibility, and most people refuse it. Campbell found this pattern in myth after myth. The refusal of the call. The hero hesitates, makes excuses, tries to avoid the journey. In your life, it's every time you say, not yet. Every time you convince yourself you're not ready. Every time you choose comfort over growth, because growth is terrifying. But here's what research on human development tells us. Life transitions, career changes, relocations, relationship shifts are periods of maximum growth and maximum anxiety. Your nervous system literally recalibrates during these moments. Psychiatrist Dan Siegel describes optimal functioning as a river flow between chaos and rigidity. When you refuse the call, you drift toward rigidity. You calcify. You become less yourself. The call is life asking you to return to the river, to risk chaos for the possibility of deeper integration. But here's the trap that stops most people. We think we'll feel ready before we step forward. We think courage comes first, then action. It's the opposite. Action comes first. Courage is what you discover while you're moving. You don't find bravery in your bedroom. You find on the road. You'll never know if you can do it until you're doing it. Think about every major step you've ever taken. Did you feel ready? Or did you feel terrified and do it anyway? The call doesn't wait for you to be ready. It comes when it comes. And your only choice is answer or spend the rest of your life wondering what could have been. So what if you answer? What if you say yes to the opportunity? End the relationship that's slowly dying? Start the business? Book the flight? Pick up the pen? What if you step onto the path? The moment you do, everything changes. Because you've entered what Campbell called the special world. The realm where the old rules don't apply and transformation becomes possible. This is where we're going next, into the unknown, where the real journey begins. There's a moment, maybe you felt it, when you cross a line you can't uncross. You quit the job. You move to the new city. You start the project. You say the thing you've been afraid to say. And the instant you do, the ground beneath your feet disappears. Welcome to the special world. In mythology, this is called crossing the threshold. It's the point of no return, where you leave behind everything familiar and enter territory you've never navigated before. And here's what they don't tell you about transformation. It doesn't feel like growth. It feels like drowning. In your ordinary world, you knew who you were. You had routines, identities, coping strategies. You knew what to expect. In the special world, all of that is stripped away. You're a beginner again. Uncertain, vulnerable, exposed. Every email feels wrong. Every conversation feels awkward. Every day you wake up thinking, what have I done? And this discomfort, this destabilization, this is exactly where transformation happens. Neuroscientist David Eagleman studies neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself. His finding, the brain only changes under two conditions, novelty and challenge. When you repeat the same patterns, your neural pathways become efficient, yes, but they also become fixed. You're on autopilot. But when you step into the unknown, when you face challenges you've never faced, your brain shifts into high alert learning mode. New connections form. New capabilities emerge. You literally become more than you were. But in the moment, it doesn't feel like becoming. It feels like breaking. This is where you meet what Campbell called threshold guardians, the obstacles and resistances that appear the instant you step forward. In myths, they're dragons and demons. In your life, they're the people who say you're being unrealistic, the bills that pile up, the rejections, the failures, the voice in your head saying, see, I told you, you should go back. And here's the secret about threshold guardians. They're not trying to stop you. They're testing whether you're serious. They're asking, do you really want this? Or are you just playing a transformation? Psychologist Angela Duckworth spent years researching what separates people who achieve difficult goals from those who don't. Her answer wasn't talent or intelligence or even passion. It was grit, the capacity to persist when it's hard, to keep walking when the path is painful, to stay committed when every cell in your body wants to quit. Because here's what every hero discovers. The path doesn't get easier. You get stronger. Think about it. Every meaningful skill you have came through difficulty. Walking meant falling hundreds of times. Reading meant confusion and frustration. Every capability you developed emerged from the friction between who you were and who you were becoming. Physicist Ilya Prigogine won a Nobel Prize for discovering something called dissipative structures. He studied how complex systems evolve, and he found that growth happens only when a system is pushed to the edge of chaos. When you're comfortable, you're stable but static, unchanging. When you're challenged, when you're in disequilibrium, the system has to reorganize at a higher level of complexity. You have to become more capable to handle what you're facing. The threshold isn't blocking your transformation, it's creating it. So you walk forward, into the uncertainty, through the discomfort. And this is the part Campbell called the road of trials, the long middle section where challenge after challenge appears. Here's the truth. Most of the journey is this part. Most of your transformation isn't dramatic moments or climactic breakthroughs. It's the daily choice to keep going when you're tired, to try again when you failed, to get up and face another day of not knowing if you're on the right path. It's slow, unglamorous, relentless work. And this is where most people quit. Not at the beginning, when the decision is fresh and exciting, but somewhere in the middle, when the initial energy has faded and the finish line is nowhere in sight. Behavioral scientists call this the messy middle. They found that motivation follows a U-curve. High at the start, when everything is new. Low in the middle, when the work is hard and progress feels invisible. High again near the end, when you can see the goal. But transformation happens in that middle trough, where it's hardest to stay. Here's what kept the ancient heroes going, allies and mentors. In every myth, the hero meets guides, people who walked the path before, who offer wisdom, tools, perspective. In your journey, they're the friends who believe in you when you don't believe in yourself. The teachers who see your potential before you do. The books that arrive at exactly the right moment, with exactly the right message. Psychologist Lev Vygotsky discovered something crucial. We grow best not alone, but in what he called the zone of proximal development, the space between what we can do independently and what we can do with guidance. A mentor pulls you into that zone, shows you that what seems impossible is just unfamiliar, says, with their presence, you can do this. I know, because I walked this path too. But you can't wait for the perfect mentor to appear. You become ready to recognize them by being on the path, by doing the work, by asking the questions that only arise when you're actually trying. The mentor appears when the student is ready, not before. And then there are the allies, the fellow travelers, the other heroes on their own journeys who walk beside you for a while. Social psychologist Shelley Taylor studied how humans respond to stress. She found something beautiful. Under pressure, we don't just fight or flee. We also tend and befriend. We reach out. We connect. We form bonds with others facing similar challenges. And those bonds become sources of strength. Because here's what you discover on the road of trials. You're not alone in struggling. Everyone doing something meaningful is facing their own resistance. Everyone growing is uncomfortable. And when you realize that something shifts, your struggle stops being evidence of inadequacy. It becomes proof you're on the path, a badge of honor. Because only people who are trying fall down. Only people reaching beyond their limits feel stretched. Your difficulty isn't a mistake. It's the mechanism. But there's still one challenge ahead that's different from all the others. One trial you can't face with allies by your side. One place no mentor can walk with you. Campbell called it the Innermost Cave. And that's where we're going next. Into the darkness, where you face not the world but yourself. There comes a moment in every real transformation when you have to go alone, when all the support and guidance and encouragement in the world can't help you, when you have to face the thing you've been running from your entire life. This is the Innermost Cave. In myths, it's the dragon's lair, the underworld, the dark forest where heroes are devoured. In your life, it's the conversation you've been avoiding, the grief you haven't processed, the truth about yourself you've been denying. It's the part of you that terrifies you most. Carl Jung spent his career exploring what he called the shadow, the aspects of ourselves we rejected, repressed, pushed into darkness, the anger we won't acknowledge, the desire we won't admit, the need we're ashamed of, the fear we refuse to name. We spend enormous energy keeping the shadow hidden, even from ourselves. But here's the paradox. The shadow doesn't just contain darkness. It contains power. All the vitality you've suppressed, all the authenticity you've denied, all the wild truth of who you actually are. It's there, locked in the shadow, waiting. And to reclaim it, you have to enter the cave. This is the moment of maximum vulnerability. Not facing external obstacles now, but internal ones. Not what's outside you, but what's inside. And it's terrifying. Because what if you look into the darkness and don't like what you see? What if the fear is right? What if you're fundamentally flawed? What if you try your hardest and it's still not enough? Psychologist Susan David studies emotional agility, the capacity to be with difficult emotions without being controlled by them. Her finding: the only way through difficult emotions is through, not around, not over, not by avoiding or suppressing or distracting. Through. You have to feel the fear to move beyond it, acknowledge the pain to heal it, face the shadow to integrate it. Every spiritual tradition teaches this in different languages. The only way out is in. The only way to the treasure is through the dragon. The only way to become whole is to face the parts you fragmented. And so you enter. Maybe it's therapy, where you finally speak the unspeakable. Maybe at a meditation retreat, where you sit with the storm inside you. Maybe at a night alone when the defenses finally collapse, and you let yourself feel everything you've been holding back. Maybe it's simply a moment of brutal honesty where you stop lying to yourself. Whatever form it takes, this is a descent into your own depths, into the parts you've been terrified to meet. And here's what happens in that darkness. You survive it. The thing you thought would destroy you doesn't. The truth you couldn't face, you face it. The emotion you believe would overwhelm you, you feel it, and it moves through you, and on the other side you're still standing. Stronger, even more whole, because you're no longer running, no longer fragmenting your energy, keeping parts of yourself hidden. You've integrated the shadow. You've claimed your power. Campbell called this moment atonement. At one meant coming into wholeness with yourself. In psychological terms, it's individuation. In spiritual language, it's awakening. In human terms, it's simply this: you remember who you are, not who you've been told you should be, not who you've been trying to become, who you actually are beneath all the strategies and stories and survival mechanisms. Your essential self, and that self has been here all along, waiting for you to stop running and come home. Neuroscientist Antonio Damasio studies consciousness and selfhood. He's discovered that our sense of identity isn't a fixed thing. It's a dynamic process, a constant integration of past, present, and future. The innermost cave is where that integration reaches a new level of coherence. where the story you tell about yourself aligns with the life you're living, where your inner experience and outer expression become one. This is what spiritual traditions call enlightenment, what psychologists call authenticity, what ordinary humans call finally feeling like myself. It's not a permanent state, not a destination you reach and stay at. It's a homecoming, a moment of recognition. Oh, this is me. This has always been me. And with that recognition comes something unexpected. Not relief, though there's that. Not peace, though there's that too. But clarity. Sudden, piercing clarity about what matters and what doesn't. Who you are and who you're not. What you're here to do and what you can let go of. In myths, this is a reward. The elixir, the treasure at the heart of the labyrinth. Not a physical object, but a state of being. Psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi studied optimal experience for decades and gave a name, flow. That state where you're fully present, fully engaged, where action and awareness merge, where time disappears and you're simply doing what you're here to do. He found that flow happens when challenge and skill are perfectly balanced, when you're stretched but not overwhelmed, when you're using everything you are to meet what's in front of you. That's the treasure. Not external success, though that may follow, but the felt experience of being fully alive, of meeting life as an equal. Here's what neuroscience tells us about this moment. When you face and overcome significant challenges, your brain releases a cascade of neurochemicals that literally rewire your sense of possibility. You're not just learning new skills. You're recalibrating your baseline for what you can handle. Post-traumatic growth research shows that people who navigate major challenges often report profound positive changes, deeper relationships, greater appreciation for life, a sense of personal strength they didn't know they had. Every wisdom tradition speaks of this. The dark night that precedes dawn, the death that precedes rebirth. You had to descend into the cave to discover what was waiting. Not a monster, but yourself, your full, unleashed, authentic self. But here's the thing, the journey isn't finished, because transformation isn't complete until you bring it back, until you return to the world you left and discover if what you found in the depths can survive in the light. That's where we're going next, back to the ordinary world, where the real test begins. You've been to the depths, you've faced yourself. You've claimed your power. Now comes the hardest part, going back. Campbell called this the return, the moment when the hero must choose to leave the special world and re-enter ordinary life. And here's why it's hard. You've changed. Fundamentally, you're not the same person who left. But the world is exactly the same. Same job, same city, same relationships. Same problems, except now you see them differently, and they see you differently too, or rather, they don't see the difference at all. This is a challenge of integration, taking what you discovered in the extraordinary and weaving it into the everyday, taking the insight you had at 3 a.m. in the cave and applying it at 9 a.m. in a meeting, taking the person you became in crisis and being that person in calm. This is where many transformations collapse. People stay in the special world. They become perpetual seekers, always at the retreat, always in the workshop, always on the journey but never bringing it home. They achieve personal transformation, yes, but they never complete the circuit. They never give the gift back. And so the journey remains incomplete. Developmental psychologist Robert Keegan talks about the subject-object shift, how what was once you, subject, becomes something you have, object. When you're lost in fear, you are fear. After the journey, you have fear, but you're not controlled by it. When you're stuck in your story, you are the story. After the journey, you recognize the story, but you're not limited by it. The return is testing this shift in real conditions, seeing if what change in the cave holds in the light. And here's what you'll discover. It does hold. Not perfectly. Not always. But fundamentally, yes, because you're different now. Your nervous system has recalibrated. Your sense of self has expanded. Your capacity has grown. You can't unsee what you've seen. Can't unknow what you know. But bringing that knowing into daily life requires something subtle. Not announcing your transformation, but embodying it. Not telling people you've changed, but being the change so clearly they can't help but notice. This is what mythologist Michael Meade calls a gifted life. The recognition that every human carries a unique gift, and that gift is only fully activated through the journey. You didn't know what your gift was until you descended into the cave. You didn't discover your purpose in comfort. You forged it in fire. And now that you've found it, everything you touch changes. Not because you're trying to change things. Not because you have all the answers. But because you're present. Because you're authentic. Because you've stopped performing and started being. And here's the thing about presence. It's contagious. When you're no longer at war with yourself, others feel safe around you. When you face your shadow, you're less triggered by theirs. When you've integrated your pain, you can hold space for theirs. Your transformation ripples outward, not through preaching, but through being. Psychologist James Pennebaker studied the power of narrative for decades. His finding: when you transform your story, you transform your life. But more than that, when you share your transformed story, you give others permission to transform theirs. Your journey becomes a map for someone else's journey. Your courage becomes kindling for their courage. This is how transformation spreads. Not top down, but person to person. Story to story. One hero helping another answer their call. But the return isn't without its challenges. Because there's one more test waiting. One final moment where you'll have to choose who you're going to be. Campbell called it the resurrection. The moment when everything you've learned is put to the ultimate test. In myths, it's the final battle. The last confrontation. In your life, it's the moment when the old patterns come roaring back. When the old fears resurface. When everything in you wants to return to who you were. Because who you become is still so new, so uncertain. This is the most dangerous moment, because it comes when you think you're done. You've done the work. You've had the breakthrough. You've started integrating. And then suddenly there it is, the old story, the old identity calling you back. Behavioral scientists call this extinction burst. The phenomenon where an old pattern intensifies just before it disappears completely. It's your nervous system's final attempt to maintain the status quo. And this is where you make the choice. Not in theory, not when you're feeling strong, but in practice, when you're tired and afraid, and every part of you wants to quit. Will you go back to who you were, or will you hold firm to who you become? This is the resurrection, the moment of rebirth, when you die to your old self completely and step fully into the new. And you'll know when it happens because you'll feel it in your body. The tension will release. The internal war will end. The fragmentation will heal. Not because everything becomes easy, but because you're finally fully yourself. Neuroscientist Lisa Feldman Barrett studies how the brain constructs emotion and experience. Her finding: you're not discovering who you are. You're constructing who you are moment by moment through the choices you make and the stories you tell. The resurrection is a moment when that construction reaches a new level of integrity, when all the parts align, when you're no longer divided, when your inner truth and your outer life become one. This is what the traditions call awakening, what psychology calls integration, what human beings call coming home to yourself. And from that place, everything changes. Not your circumstances, necessarily, but how you meet them, who you are in relationship to them. And with that shift comes the final stage of the journey, the moment when you realize this was never just about you. The transformation you underwent, the darkness you faced, the power you claimed, it was all preparation for what comes next, for giving your gift to the world. That's where we're going now, to the completion of the circle. So you return. You walk back into your life, your job, your relationships, your everyday world. But you're not the same. And because you're not the same, the world isn't the same either. This is a paradox of transformation. You change one thing, yourself, and everything changes. Not because the external circumstances have shifted, but because you're meeting them from a different place, from wholeness instead of fragmentation, from presence instead of performance, from truth instead of strategy. And people feel it. They might not know what's different. They might not be able to name it, but they feel it. Campbell called this final stage return with elixir, bringing back the gift you found on your journey. And here's what's crucial to understand. The gift was never for you alone. It was never just about your healing, your growth, your transformation. The entire journey, all the struggle, all the darkness, all the becoming, was so you could bring something back, so you could be a light for others still in darkness, so you could be a guide for those hearing the call but afraid to answer. Your return matters, not because you have everything figured out, not because you're perfect now, not because you've arrived, but because you've walked the path, because you know what it costs and what it gives, because you've been broken and put yourself back together differently. And that knowledge, that experience, that lived wisdom, that's the gift. Here's what research on social contagion tells us. Emotions, behaviors, and beliefs spread through networks not through conscious persuasion, but through modeling. When someone in your network makes a significant life change, you become more likely to make one too. When someone you know faces their fear, you become braver. When someone demonstrates that transformation is possible, your sense of what's possible expands. This is how culture shifts, not through top-down mandates, but through person-to-person transmission, one hero inspiring another to answer their call. Your transformation isn't just your own. It's an invitation to everyone around you. But here's the thing about giving your gift. You don't force it. You don't announce it or market it or perform it. You simply live it. You show up as the person you become and let that speak. You tell your story not as a prescription, but as a possibility. You offer your wisdom not as the answer, but as one path among many. Because the hero's journey isn't about becoming a guru. It's about becoming more human, more real, more whole, more yourself. And that authentic presence is itself the teaching. That's what people need most. Not another expert telling them what to do, but another human showing them it's possible to change, to grow, to face the darkness and come out the other side, to be afraid and do it anyway. Psychologist Carl Rogers spent his career studying what creates transformation in therapy. His finding, it's not the techniques or theories. It's the quality of presence. When one person meets another with full acceptance, without judgment, without agenda, transformation becomes possible. Your gift isn't what you know. It's who you've become. And who you become creates space for others to become. This is the deepest form of service. Not fixing or saving or teaching, but being so fully yourself that others remember they can be fully themselves too. But here's the final secret of the hero's journey. The part Campbell emphasized again and again. It never ends. The moment you return with one gift, a new call appears. The moment you integrate one transformation, a new threshold presents itself. You answer one call, and discover is preparing you for next. You face one shadow and find another, deeper one waiting. You complete one journey and realize it was just the beginning of a larger one. This is what it means to be alive, to be perpetually on the journey, to be always leaving and always returning, always dying and always being reborn. Not because you're lost, but because you're growing. Because life isn't a problem to solve. It's a mystery to live. And the deepest way to live it is to recognize you're not having an experience. You are the experience. You're not watching a story unfold. You are the story. Philosopher Alan Watts taught that life is not a journey to the grave with the intention of arriving safely in a well-preserved body, but rather to skid in sideways, thoroughly used up, totally worn out, loudly proclaiming, "What a ride." That's the spirit of the hero. Not someone who avoids struggle, but someone who meets it. Not someone who's fearless, but someone who's willing. Willing to be changed. Willing to be challenged. Willing to discover what they're capable of. And in that willingness, something miraculous happens. Life stops being something that happens to you and becomes something you're actively creating. Every moment becomes a choice. Every challenge becomes an invitation. Every setback becomes a teacher. You stop being a passive victim of circumstance and become an active participant in your own becoming. That's the ultimate gift of the hero's journey. Not what you gain at the end, but who you become along the way. So here we are, at the end of this telling, which is really an invitation to your own. Because the question was never whether you're on the hero's journey. You are. You always have been. Every challenge you faced was a threshold. Every fear you confronted was a guardian. Every moment you chose growth over comfort was a step deeper into the cave. The question is, are you aware of it? Are you seeing your life as a myth it is? Because when you do, everything shifts. You stop seeing problems and start seeing invitations. You stop asking, why me? And start asking, what is this teaching me? You stop waiting for life to begin and realize it's been happening all along. Every mundane morning, every painful setback, every quiet triumph. All of it has been the journey. And you're the hero of it. Not because you're special or chosen or better than anyone else, but because you're willing, because you're here, because you keep walking even when you don't know where the path leads. That's what makes a hero. Not perfection, not fearlessness, not certainty. Just this, the willingness to answer the call. So, whatever call you're hearing right now, answer it. Whatever threshold you're standing at, cross it. Whatever cave you've been avoiding, enter it. Not because it will be easy. It won't. Not because you'll succeed immediately. You might not. But because the alternative, stay in the known world forever, never discovering what you're capable of, reach in the end having never really lived. That's not survival. That's slow death. And you weren't put here to survive. You were put here to become, to journey, to transform, to discover depths of courage and beauty and strength you can't imagine from where you're standing now. Campbell studied thousands of myths and found they all end the same way. The hero returns transformed and life goes on, but not the same life. A richer life, a deeper life, a life infused with meaning, because it was earned through struggle. That's what we all want, isn't it? Not comfort, not safety, not even happiness, but meaning, the felt sense that our lives matter, that we're here for a reason, that we're not just passing time, but participating in something larger than ourselves. The hero's journey gives you that, not at the end, but in the walking, in the daily choice to keep going when it's hard, to keep showing up when it's uncertain, to keep becoming who you're meant to be, even when you can't see the destination. Because here's the final truth. You are the destination. The person you're becoming, that's what the journey is for. Not some future version you'll finally accept, but the fullness of who you are right now, in this moment, with all your light and shadow, all your strength and vulnerability, all your knowing and not knowing, every bit of it. That's the hero. That's you. So go, walk your path, face your trials, enter your cave, fall and rise, fail and try again, question and discover. And know this, you're not alone. Billions have walked this before you. Billions will walk it after. And right now, millions are walking it with you. We're all heroes on our own journeys. We're all myths in motion. And the story we're telling together, it's the most important story there is. The story of what it means to be courageously, authentically, fully human. The call is always there, waiting. The question is, will you answer? The world is waiting for your return, for your gift, for you